Students, just in case you're not able to watch the longer live class version of this, I wanted to make a shorter version of this for you. I hope the reflection here on my glasses is not too distracting. The type of glasses that I have and the fact that the lights are off is because the migraine I was getting in the middle of the the live stream it has gotten worse, but I want to make sure to do this while I still can and don't forget. So we're talking about the Neolithic Revolution, and that is going to be between 8000 BCE and 4000 BCE. Please remember BCE means before Common Era and has replaced BC. I don't think everybody got the memo, but hopefully that will catch up in the next few years. Neolithic literally means new stone. Neo is new and lith is stone. And this is the new Stone Age. Old Stone Age is going to be the stuff that we were doing with stone tools for our hunter-gatherer time period. New Stone Age is stone tools for our new agricultural revolution. What is a revolution? It's a really big change. Evolution we can think of as a small change over a large period of time, whereas revolution is a big change over a small period of time. And that also counts for stuff like protests, the Russian Revolution, for example. This is a big political change in a shorter period of time. So before the Neolithic Revolution, we were hunter-gatherers, not just us as Homo sapiens, but the other hominids as well. Now, we typically think of our hunter-gatherer ancestors as really, really big on the hunt, and yes and no. Yes, hunting, of course, was a big ticket item, especially if you could get yourself a mammoth. But the vast majority of calories were provided by gathering. Now, when we think about gathering, I know we tend to think about fruits, vegetables, and roots, but we also want to remember things like eggs. Eggs, tarantulas, other bugs, those types of things are going to provide for us a lot of good calories and protein as well. So those are going to be where most of our food came from. And in fact, 80% of the world today still has bugs in their diet in some form. So of course, if you're a hunter-gatherer, that means you eat what you can kill or what you can find. This is not a group of people that were carrying a lot of excess stuff. Remember, you're moving around. You're not able to carry a lot of like preserved meats or really hard, like hard dried fruits or something. That's not something you want to carry around with you. As you're moving around with the seasons, you need to pack light. And being unable to do that means it takes you longer to move, which could be deadly in some cases. So of course, if you can't find anything to eat, you kind of go without food, and so that's why it was such a difficult life for us. When we're talking about lesson 1 and about how jewelry was made by some of the Neanderthal, we have to remember that they were making jewelry instead of doing something else, and so of course that takes a lot of extra time, which is why it's such a beautiful dedication they had. So the first real revolution in human history is going to be our agricultural revolution. This idea of farming things. What a big, big, cool thing. I will say that our first recipe using wheat was either beer or bread, most likely beer. So beer has been around us for pretty much as long as we can. There's also actually liquor that gets made, not liquor, but wine that gets made naturally. So if you guys are interested in learning about history in a sort of a different way, following the way that like alcohol was made and what it's been used for is really an interesting way to study history. Agriculture means I can control what I have in terms of food. So this gives me a lot more safety and a lot more food security. When we talk about agriculture, we're talking about plant agriculture and also animal agriculture. So we use agriculture for both of those terms. We can see from this map, this is the spread of agriculture. And this book, unfortunately, still uses BC instead of BCE. This dark red, it looks like orange here, but it shows up as dark red on the map. That's going to be in this Egypt, Mesopotamia region. We're also going to get some of it here in southern Europe. The purple that spreads out, and that's going to be between 2000 BCE and 5000 BCE, that's of course going further into Africa, further into Europe, but also here in South Asia, East Asia, North America, and South America. Okay, and the yellow comes even later. So these are other regions that are still receiving or still developing agriculture. The two most important crops are going to be rice and then wheat and barley. So wheat and barley, those are considered like a crop because a lot of times they're grown together. Okay. These are different types of rice here, just some examples. There's many, many, many types of rice. There's many types of wheat. There's many types of barley. Climate is going to be the reason that our food is what it is. So we're either going to have situations where we can have wheat or situations where you can have rice. Yes, there are different types of rice, but however, the type that ends up being cultivated and used a lot is going to be the type that takes a lot of water. Okay, and so that's why it kind of answers the question, how come some cultures eat bread and other cultures eat rice? So, as we mentioned, it happens in West Asia, East Africa, South and Southeast Asia, as well as North and South America. In West Asia, that's a place that we have traditionally called the Middle East. West Asia is more of a geographically neutral way to refer to that region. To call it the Middle East is from a European perspective. Of course, if you live in East Asia, then places like Israel are not to the east of you, are they? They're not your Middle East. Okay, so we are referring to it as West Asia. So what is our big deal for the agricultural revolution? Number one, we can have food. We can keep it, store it. We don't have to worry about transporting it anymore like we did when we were hunter-gatherers. And the other thing is that because we have all this food security, we can do other stuff. Now, I know when we think of farming, we think of toiling the soil all day, but quite frankly, your personal small farm is not going to be something you're working on the entire day. You're working somewhat on your farm stuff, and then you have free time. This was a big deal to have free time. What am I going to make in my free time? Well, I can do it, use my free time to make things like this jug. This is the Thinking Man jug from Israel. And you can start making other stuff that you would need. Things like baskets. Clothing types, like different types of clothes, different types of shoes and jewelry and that sort of thing. You can start specializing in buildings. So you can make different kinds of buildings, not just to live in, but also for storage. So these are some new things that we're able to do, which is really cool. Think about what you might do back then. What would your job be? So I think I would maybe build stuff, or I would maybe bake things, I think would be my specialty. If you want to specialize in something that you do with your hands, you are an artisan, okay? And of course, we need a place to live. And so now, instead of just here's a farm, we have here's a farm and then some places for us to live inside of it. And that's where our cities start off. This is a city called Jericho, and these are the remains of it as it is seen today. Jericho is from around 8000 BCE, so it's about 10,000 years ago. This is an artist's idea of what it could have looked like based on our understanding of the archaeology and based on our understanding of the texts and things that were written about the description of the buildings at that time period. This big wall is going to be great for keeping people out. We want to control who comes in, who comes out. And of course, we want to protect ourselves from any predators, like animal predators that are out there. This bigger section in the middle, just from an urban planning standpoint, you want all of your most important or most used stuff to be in the middle. Traditionally, and even today, the stuff that we tend to build around is either government related, something that has to do with the culture or the people. If you have, for example, a lot of children in your neighborhood, then the central place might be a park, it might be a daycare, it might be a school, or you would want a government building. We'll talk more about ziggurats, but those are going to be sort of a building for multi-purpose, so it's pretty cool. So up here you're going to get the noble buildings, you're going to get religious buildings, you're going to get government buildings, so that's pretty awesome stuff. Another type of place that we found is Çatalhöyük. This was around 500 years later compared to Jericho. And these are some of the areas we find in a lot of these homes. When you think of like a little area sectioned off from the rest of the room, and the room is basically your house, we might think maybe it's a bathroom or maybe it's some type of cooking area, but that's not going to be the case here. Number one, you don't want to poo where you sleep and eat. That's just really not setting yourself up for success in terms of avoiding disease. And so even before we understood what disease was, we did understand that poo, somehow being around it, I'm going to get sick. Of course, it also just doesn't smell nice. Outdoor kitchens are going to be a lot more common as well, just because smoke inhalation is definitely not healthy. And even if you don't understand the long-term buildup of smoke particles in your lungs, you at least understand, hey, I'm getting a headache from this right now, and I'm coughing a lot, and the baby's crying. So what this region was for in the homes was usually to keep children. And you can also keep baby chickens here as well. I'm assuming baby pigs or baby goats would also be okay here, although goats can tend to jump a bit. But the little baby chicks will definitely do well here, and little baby kids as well. So our society overall turns into a civilization. So what is a civilization? You need 6 things. The first one is a city. You need a place for the civilization to be. Okay. The first civilization that we have the most evidence for is Mesopotamia. That is a region, not a nation. Okay, Mesopotamia is a region. Mesopotamia is made up of a bunch of different city-states. These are basically states, or cities that function as an independent nation. Okay, they're going to function independently. They have their own military. They deal with their own resources. That's what this is going to do. It's just small enough that we would call it a city. There's no sub-cities within the city. Okay, so that's what a city-state is. It's just a state. It functions by itself. It's like a nation, but it's not really big with multiple cities inside of it. Okay. This area is called the Fertile Crescent. You guys may have heard of this as well. Just because if we look at this shape, it's sort of this half moon kind of shape or crescent shape. So same thing with star shape or circle shape. If it was rectangular, we'd call it the Fertile Rectangle. So that's the reason it's called the Fertile Crescent. The second thing we need is a government. So now that we have a bunch of people living together, how do we make sure we're living together in a fair way? And that was what the government was there to make sure that we're there fairly, to also control any type of military that we would need early on. This is an example of a government social structure that is based on a monarchy, which is a king or queen, which is one leader. But it doesn't mean that this is the only option. So there are other types where maybe the government official would be second, the priest might be third, the noble might be fourth. Priests and nobles might be the same social structure. There are other ones that would also include military and police. So those are sometimes listed as government officials, and sometimes they're listed separately. So this is just one example, okay? We also want a religion. Why? Why do we need a religion? The government is there to sort of control your day-to-day stuff. Where taxes go, is everybody safe? Are we being invaded? Do we need to have a military to protect us? This is sort of our day-to-day stuff. Religion is basically going to be the stuff that we do to make sure nature works in our favor. So this was the idea that there were gods that were in control of nature, and that if we make them happy, those nature gods are going to give us what we want. Enough sunshine, enough water, but not too much, proper changing of the seasons, that sort of thing. So that's why we have this religion. You can sort of think about it as pre-science, proto-science. This was a way for us to try to control the natural world before we understood more about it. Okay. So there is actually some interesting evidence if you want to learn more about a place called Göbekli Tepe. This appears to be a religious and or calendar structure that predates civilization, which is very strange because why would we have these big stone things before we have a civilization? Why would a nomadic group of people create this? But this is, not the first time in history if they would have done this. Nomads occasionally will stop, make a bunch of stuff, and then just continue to move on, and perhaps that's what happened here. Perhaps civilization started earlier, and we just don't have the evidence for it at this time. So I just want you guys to know that this does exist. Maybe in about 15 years, 30 years, we might learn more about it. So now, because of religion, we have a new job that's a priest. You can kind of think about a priest as a teacher in a religion. So if instead of teaching you guys about history right now, I was teaching you guys about religious stuff and how you can make the gods and goddesses happy, I would be your priest instead of your teacher. And that's basically it. There's this idea that maybe priests can communicate with or understand communications from the spirits or the gods. This could be with something like speaking to them or singing to them and trying to listen for what they say. Or it could be something like if I had my tea leaves left over in my tea mug here, and after I finished drinking the tea, I could read what the tea leaves had to say about the future, and I would believe that this information was given to me by the gods. So it isn't necessarily communication of speaking and listening, but it could be any type of communication, or perceived communication, I suppose we should say. Early religions are going to be polytheist, and so poly is many, and theism is the belief in a god or gods. This is kind of a fun picture. We talked about it a little bit in the live stream, but I noticed this guy here looks kind of like Beast. We have someone that looks like Nightcrawler, so it's kind of an interesting take on these polytheistic ancient gods. One of the buildings that is going to show up pretty frequently in these ancient civilizations is something called the ziggurat. The ziggurat was a religious building, but it was also a place for political speeches and announcements, and it was also a place to store excess foods, like excess grains. That means that I could go there during a holiday when maybe we would need to hear a message from the gods, or I could go there during some type of political decision making. Maybe taxes are going up, maybe we need more people joining the military. I would listen to what the leader has to say. I would also go there to give any excess grains, such as if I was paying taxes, or if there was a famine, I would go there to receive my daily rations. So that's another use of the ziggurat, which is pretty cool. I like that it was just this multi-purpose building. A social structure is now what we're going to have. That doesn't mean that hunter-gatherers don't have social jobs, but they're not really going to have a social structure. Yeah, there's a leader, and yeah, there's people that are not the leader, but now we're going to get a group of people in the middle, okay? There's these people now that are going to accumulate resources. And just like we have today, people with more resources like to show them off. You know, we could wear shoes, and everybody wants to wear shoes, but then you could have people that have more resources, in this case money, and they're going to be wearing really nice, expensive shoes, for example. So this would be something that we do today that is something we did in the past. So not everybody, of course, needs jewelry, but everyone needs clothing, right? We want to protect ourselves from the heat of the sun or the cold of the winter, for example. But for somebody that has more resources, they're able to afford more elaborate and beautiful clothing. So this way I could just see them and say, wow, this person has what I don't. Something we definitely still do today. This is an example of some of the jewelry from that time period, so it's pretty beautiful stuff. You can also imagine too wearing this. So this is a choker to wear around your neck, and it's quite thick, you know, maybe as thick as my turtleneck here. And we've got this large kind of teardrop sections that are hanging down, and anytime you move, it's going to make this like clinkling kind of sound. So you'd hear the person and be just totally mesmerized, not only by watching these beautiful shiny things moving, but also hearing them clinking as the person is talking or moving around. So it's a very mesmerizing piece of jewelry. This time period, and also this idea that we want to get things that we don't necessarily need, but we want to show things off, this is going to be the start of economics. Now again, this does not mean that trade didn't happen among hunter-gatherer tribes. It's just trade would happen if it was a possibility, and I happen to see somebody. So for example, our tribe might make a lot of extra flint sharp objects, like flint knives, for example. We just make extras. We just have them with us, just in case we lose them. Maybe we have a very clumsy member of our tribe that drops their stuff off of cliffs or into water and it damages these, so we end up just having a few extra. But we might run into a tribe that has a lot of extra dried meat. We could trade. This means that we're doing it because we happen to be able to. It's not that our society relies on trade in order to make it function. So that's going to be the big difference between trade in a civilization versus trade as a hunter-gatherer or nomadic tribe. Okay, so we do want to make note of that. Also, we want writing. We need to understand not only to keep track of what's going on, but also to remember things like day-to-day stuff that's going on, but we also want to keep track of things like what? Why would we want to do writing? What point would there be? Am I keeping a journal? Not usually. I'm going to keep track of stuff like Well, this time there was a lot of rain, but at the same time next year there wasn't. I would be keeping track of the seasons so I understand eventually this is the perfect time to plant this type of food. I could also keep track of what I've harvested or what I've traded or sold. I can keep track of that. I would also keep track of things that we did for the gods. So these are things that we want to keep track of. Eventually, we start writing down stories. But the first stuff that we're really going to write down is like day to day stuff that's going to help our civilization prosper. The Bronze Age is when we're going to get a lot of this. This is after the Neolithic Age, and it's called the Bronze Age because we made stuff with bronze. It's pretty straightforward, thankfully. The first writing system that we have a lot of evidence for is cuneiform. So this is in the Mesopotamia region, and it uses the Sumerian language. And then after that, we have hieroglyphics. Art is something that's going to be another part of civilization, or hallmark of civilization. Art comes in a lot of different forms. There's jewelry, there's painting, and of course, it predates civilization. You guys may know these from these Lascaux caves. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I don't speak French. Some of these paintings from Aboriginal Australia are 40,000 years old or older, and this is from Nigeria. So these are some really lovely cave art paintings. So what's the big deal now in civilization? Well, now we're able to make large types of artworks. We're able to keep a lot of different smaller types of artworks as well. So for me, maybe if I'm a hunter-gatherer nomad type, I might have something this size and I keep this with me as a religious relic or something like that. Now I don't have to just have something that's pocket-sized. I can put something a little bit larger. I don't have to worry about it getting broken as we're moving from region to region, from season to season. Also, we have artwork in the form of architecture, but how we decorate the architecture in addition to just what style the architecture is. This is an incense burner from Bronze Age Vietnam, and you can see this is probably not something that I'm going to just carry around with me if I'm a hunter-gatherer. This is also a statue from about 4,000 years ago in the Mesopotamia region. This is of a prince who's carrying this overflowing jug of water. So the Sumerians are the ones, as we said, that are going to have the first writing system with this cuneiform, and you basically make it with a reed, which is your stylus, that's how you write things, and then the clay is what you're using instead of paper. They also had printing, which is really cool. You would take some type of hard object, like a stone, and carve into it, and then you could roll it onto clay. This is another example of that. This one here is an example of a leader's seal. So this is something they would put on an official document to maybe start it off as a header, or maybe to seal it at the end. Say, hey, this is, I, the king, have said this. Roll that there instead of a signature. But you could also think of some other stuff you might want to keep track of. Things like if I'm a merchant who sells certain types of items, and I sell the same types of items, I would want to have a weekly ledger, perhaps. So I could have something that would be carved and I can roll it out. Maybe the top would say apples, bushels of wheat, earrings, something like that. And then I could use my stylus to write the number of things that I had at the beginning of the week and as many that I sold during the week. So that would be another example of it. I just really think it's cool that not only did they figure this out, but also a way to make it save time. It just seems like such a modern invention, but it definitely is an ancient invention. It's pretty cool. We also get from this time period the wagon wheel, the sundial, copper and tin coming together as bronze, which is going to be nice and hard. It's stronger than copper or tin. And astronomy is when we're going to start tracking astronomy really well. And also this thing called a base 60 number system. This is something we still use in terms of like minutes and hours. Not minutes and hours, sorry, minutes and seconds. But basically it's these little notches in your finger. I don't know how well you can see it since my lights are off, but you can definitely see it here. Maybe we can make it a little bit larger, help you out. And so you can see in the middle one here, each of these little segments of your finger counts as one. But we're not counting our thumb. So total, if I hold up this many, I have 4, right? And then from there, I can count not 4, I have 12 instead of 4. So from there, then each finger becomes 12, 12, 12, 12, 12 for a total of 60. That's 12 times 5. Pretty cool stuff. So you'd basically be counting like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which I think is pretty cool, right? Because on one hand, in our modern counting system, I can count up to 5. If you use the Korean type system, I don't know if others use it, but depending on which fingers go up and which fingers come down, you can count up to 10. But counting to 12 on a single hand, that's pretty helpful, definitely, for sure. And I can also, again, count this way, and you would end up with 60. So that's pretty cool, instead of just 10, right? So I think it's a really innovative kind of way to approach it, especially since they're not going to have a lot of tablets and stuff handy to write something down. You're going to need a way to increase as many things as you can count, right? You want to have as many numbers as you can get on a single hand, since that's what you're using most of the time. Pretty cool stuff. That is it for our lesson today. If you guys have any questions, please post it in the comments section below. And if you do have time, you can also check out the live stream. You can try to learn just by hearing. You don't necessarily have to look at the screen, so you can just kind of play it while you're running an errand or something along those lines. It helps you study that way as well. All right, guys, I'll see you later. Have a good day.